Aloha, everyone. Today we will hit the latest AI headlines, then slow down for a story about how AI is starting to read decades of science to help discover new magnetic materials. So settle in, say hi in chat, and let us get into the news. It's Wednesday, November 26, 2025, and this is episode 603. I am Jyunmi, and I am here with Beth, Ann, and Andy. And this is the Daily AI Show. Good morning, everyone. So let's do a round robin of our favorite and most intriguing news that we've seen come out in the last couple of days. Anne, do you have a story?
I need to go second because I'm still gathering one little piece of information.
I can go first.
Andy, help me out here. You got news, right?
Sorry
I
about that.
will. Now, I know that somebody's going to cover, Chat GPT voice, in the interface. So I'm going to skip by that one. I know there's this big announcement from the White House about Project Genesis, where they're going to basically apply the Department of Energy's supercomputing to the advancement of science and make sure that the United States is at the forefront of scientific research, even though they're removing funding from all of the academic sources of research. But they're going to give some resources to the central effort. But I wanted to mention something that follows on yesterday's demonstration by Brian of his new gem, which is an interactive story narrative generator that he uses on the car rides that they have to do when they drive away from Florida to Georgia and so on. So character.ai has just released a thing that's very similar, stories. And it's a visual and replayable interactive fiction format where users select the characters that they want to have, choose a genre for the story, and then they individually guide branching narratives by making decisions with this interactive story. So it sounds quite familiar, based on, the prompt and the description that Brian, shared with us yesterday. But Character AI now has an interactive story generator, for multi-character narrative fiction.
Are you saying that Character AI listens to the show, Andy?
They must, because just the timing. They were so quick to release it after Brian revealed his gem.
Because you have a great idea and you know what it does. You can vibe code it in 24 hours.
And they did. Yes.
Yep. So I got a couple of follow-ups if you can answer, Andy. Did they say if this was just personal, like you would generate it just for yourself, or could you share your stories as well?
Yeah, I didn't read into the detail of the story. It caught my eye because it was so familiar from our discussion yesterday. Right.
And it does speak towards that direction of people making their own content on the fly for themselves, right? Which is the
leap to a discussion, which is, the future in which full-length feature films are personally customized by your AI, the combination of agents that are not only in the LLM space, but also in the video generation space, multimodal, interacting, listening to what the commentary is in the room and, modifying the plot line even as a result of that. It's fascinating, what the possibilities are, and potentially a little mind-boggling and maybe even confusing to the, not fully formed brains that younger people have. So,
well, this is kind of tied to the Disney thing, right? The Disney announcement, right? They're going to put user-generated content onto Disney Plus. So we'll see how that works out.
I didn't see that. That's very interesting.
Well, but I mean, it's alarming too, right? Like, I felt very strongly. In fact, I continue to feel very strongly about what happens to Bambi's mom. And if you're in a car with children, then I will not go on. But if you also saw Bambi at any time, you know what happens to Bambi's mom. But that was an important thing that I could not control, right? Like there was
Mm.
an uncomfortable growth moment for me that apparently is still impacting me, but it was important. Like I'm not sure that that should go away. And if you're basing it based on if you're just giving me what I want in a story, I'm not sure. That said, I'm going to move on to the voice announcement, which is that voice now is in your ChatGPT chats. Because one thing that happened with that is that it looks like voice works with 5.1, which they had not added 5.1 as a model for the voice when it was a separate app. They also allow you to choose in your settings if you want it to be a separate app, so it's okay if you don't want to do this. I am not sure that this, does like, it'll build visuals for you, right? Like, in the video announcing it, somebody says, "Hey, could you show me a map of that, tree that we were just talking about?" And it generates the map, and you can see where you are related to, if you've turned on your location settings for your phone as you're doing this, right? So you can see that kind of stuff. What I'm not sure about is my main complaint about ChatGPT voice is that it starts speaking before it writes the thing. So if it gets interrupted, the answer is not fully formed. And then you've lost that part of the conversation. I've not been able to test that with an interruption. Yay, right? Like, okay, I will continue to test and see how this is going to work. The other thing that relates to both of those stories, and is its own story, was OpenAI being sued by the child teen who committed suicide, responded by saying, you're not allowed, it's against our user use policies to use ChatGPT in a way that results in suicide or self-harm. And like, wow, yep. Uh, oh, you violated our user policies by killing yourself, and therefore we're not responsible is a hell of a take. But
Wow.
I am not sure that moving further into voice and something that is able to create something based on your desires that also has this policy of whatever effects you have, well, those are on you kind of stuff is a tricky place for me, because it seems to me that they're then looking at this as removing their responsibility. The first priority is to remove any responsibility that they have, and then to look at what the effects might be. Right? Or looking at what the effects might be is so that they can position it in a way that they're not responsible, which we talked about the other day, right? Like, we're going to build it. Y'all decide what you want to do with it and what it's going to be. Those are my stories on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it invokes the larger discussion about guardrails, transparency, and what kind of, you know, what is our overall responsibility towards that. So if they say it's not theirs, then is it then collectively ours, and then we have to enforce that? Yeah, I think that's a larger discussion for sure.
It's true, and that is certainly happening in an environment in which multi-communities, multi-nations are having conversations internally about, do we have a collective responsibility to each other or not? Right? Mm-hmm. Is there a thing there? Happy Thanksgiving, everybody!
And what do you got for us?
I have nothing but like totally Debbie Downer tag-ons to the other news stories. So I'm going to start fresh with a similarly, but maybe less profound bummer piece of news, which is that the more clickbait you feed LLMs, not only the dumber do they get, they stay persistently dumber, and worse than that, they turn into narcissistic, psychopathic personalities. So the study that was done was primarily using as a source Twitter/X. So brilliant lineage. We've got Elon Musk, Twitter X, LLM data, LLMs behaving like narcissists. It's not that far, Apple doesn't fall too far from the tree is what I'm saying. So what I did was, as I was quickly trying to get myself up to speed on this story, because it just hit my TikTok this morning, was I did all of the new things in Notebook LM. I don't know if you guys have already talked about it, but you know how they now have slide decks and they now have infographics. They added slide deck and infographic recently. And I wanted to say that I've now run probably, I'm going to say like 15 to 20 1-hour talk transcripts through Notebook LM to test the slide deck and the infographic too, because Nano Banana is like such a, everybody's darling with infographics right now. And I will say that if I use a smaller, not like it really does not work with large batches of data, which maybe other people know. But if I limit it to maybe a couple of hours, the slide decks are actually usable. I would seriously consider rolling out with one of them in a low stakes context. They're not ugly. They're not, like Manus. They're pretty. They are only a little, they seem to only hallucinate a little bit. And it hasn't been anything where I was like, oh, this is a showstopper. I can't use this slide deck. But so I wanted to share that we have that resource at our disposal now. If you needed a slide deck in 4 minutes, you have your solution for it. It's just not that bad and getting better. But about the story itself, what they did was they studied pieces of data where it's not that the content was low quality. That didn't matter as much as the amount of time people spent on it. That it was like in a little tiny chunk, and that packaging of the data just deteriorated everything so much. These are obviously very lay terms, but that then the models just became incapable of deep thinking. So you're not going to get any. You're not going to. I mean, any and all and never. I know, but this is a bad sign for what we for the future, because what happens is it takes a very, very long time to bring it back from that brink of not being as useful.
It was very persistent. I remember reading about this, and I think that they selected only the most viral videos, on X. So it was selecting the things that the people consumed the most because they were being spread the most. And of course, that means each was filled with outrage and, sensationalism, and preposterousness. And so all of that as new training fodder for an LLM poisons the mind. By extension, we have to believe that it's poisoning the mind of the people who are consuming that kind of viral content as well.
Right. Yeah. And it's relevant because X did change the algorithm to show the most popular content. Like it intentionally changed the algorithm. So it's not that you're seeing subjects that you're particularly interested in. I mean, X was never, X is a business run by Elon Musk. So it's not like it was trying to do like really personal, super interest kind of stuff. But they intentionally changed the algorithm very recently, which makes this research very relevant.
I wonder if that's going to be a new benchmark or part of the announcement set of any model is if they'll talk about the data sources, maybe in a general sense, and then it becomes more important what kind of data or where it comes from, and move on from there.
And then the personality of the narcissist, how narcissistic is the model, I suppose, would be the question.
Sure. Also, if you don't trust a certain source, that's going to inform you a little bit there.
Well, and that's true of any site, right? Like if you have not seen the people that you follow in a while on your following feed, go make sure you're still following them, and B, go directly to their feed, because the algorithm may no longer show you what they've posted most recently. Right.
Can I have to say one thing, Jyunmi, I'll keep it to one bullet point, which is if you're not paying attention to the women who are changing their pronouns on LinkedIn and having their impression, their reach, their impressions and engagement all of a sudden like dramatically you must pay attention to this, because there's going to be a class action suit about pushing women out of the workforce through this algorithmic bias. But if you have women who you follow and you're not seeing them, you must grab their URL, create a little folder, and go to their profiles on a regular basis to keep them in your feed and keep their stuff. I mean, this is like social justice, it takes you 5 seconds to go to that person's profile, engage a little bit, and help the algorithm, the completely biased algorithm, be equitable. That's my call to action for the day. I can go now.
Yeah. No, it's
you
a
can't.
good point. I didn't realize that there was some direct evidence of that kind of thing happening. So that kind of
It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah.
Karl has joined us. Thank you for hopping in today, Karl. So it's time to put the spotlight on you. And what's your news story for the day?
I came in here like coming in hot, wanting to talk about something, but my mind has been like 4 different things at the same time.
Jyunmi, don't call on people.
It's at the tip of my tongue. What was it?
Okay, well, while you think about that, I want to talk. I want to weave off of what Anne. Okay. Yeah. Andre Carpet. Okay.
And you're frozen. Yeah, you're freezing a
Oh,
little.
froze. Okay. Well, there's Ilya Sutskever is also in the news about things that he's done. So I think he's going to talk about Andre Karpathy, but I'm not sure what he's going to say. So I wanted to weave off of what you were talking about, and with respect to Notebook LM. And I wanted to just remind people that Google is really, out there in the education market and really building some things that are important in that way. And I wanted to draw attention to Learn About, which is one of their experiments in the lab. But I just found that they actually have a Chrome app that now lives on my desktop. So I find that I use Notebook LM largely to learn about something that's complex, and I wanted to digest that and present it as an audio and/or briefing document. Well, now I have this Chrome app that's living on my desk, and I didn't even know that Chrome apps existed. It's not a Chrome extension. It's actually, when you launch this app, it's in the breadcrumb is in the applications folder in a folder called Chrome apps. And there's the Learn About Chrome app in there. But if I go through my regular Finder and on my Mac and try to find in applications this folder called Chrome app, it doesn't appear. So it's a brand new model of a way to build a desktop application that's running on my machine. I can't find it, but it's now there. I'm afraid to close it because I'm not sure I can relaunch it. But it's there. It's Google Learn About, and it's sitting there waiting for me to chat with it about anything that I want explanation on. Now, I'm going to tie this to something very important. I've historically used Perplexity for that purpose. Anytime I have a question about anything, I just go to the Perplexity tab or the Perplexity app on my desktop, and I ask the question, and Perplexity really is satisfying in providing a response on that. Well, this is news just today that Perplexity's global app downloads dropped 80% in the last 6 weeks. And there's a graph here of their global app downloads. And what this says is that the growth that was dramatic over the last period, like starting back in July, all of that growth was from paid ad marketing. And then when they shut off that paid ad marketing, the level of downloads dropped, precipitously back down. It's still above the level prior to the paid marketing level. So there's some, carry on from that, but it shows that Perplexity's growth was expensive growth. It wasn't organic growth. And that's disappointing to me because I find Perplexity to be very deserving of growth, but it's just not there. And so that's interesting new information about the decline in Perplexity's growth.
Fascinating.
I want to comment on that because I think that there's always been a thought, what does Perplexity's role serve when it has all the models right there for you to use? But like, if I want to search for something, whatever model I have does the search for me. And I get all the features. So I was thinking, like, how can Perplexity stand out? And it had some of the I don't think pages. I haven't gone to Perplexity in like months, so I don't know if the pages are still there, or some of the features, right? So I'm not sure what it serves. There's still a lot of people that it's actually funny because there's more people when we visit our clients that we hear Perplexity over, say, Gemini. There's more people saying, "Oh, I use Perplexity." So I just don't know what in the future, what will it do?
How sustainable is it?
Yes.
Does it really have a differentiator or a moat that they can defend? But user adoption is an important, users and an active and vocal user base like Perplexity has had does confer some momentum to that brand, whether or not it actually has distinctive feature function benefits over the others.
Yeah, I think we've talked about Perplexity being one of the acquisition opportunities for other companies like Apple and things like that in the past. And so this might, reiterate that a little bit. I was really hoping that they would take the ubiquity route like Netflix did, so that you would see Perplexity on everything. And that's what really solidified Netflix's use. So we'll see how that turns out, because I do like a lot of Perplexity's features. And I wonder if there's an opportunity now to take advantage. If people see this fall off, now there's an opportunity to take advantage of these features that not a lot of people know about and integrate that into your process. But we'll see how that goes. I did want to cover a couple of other stories. Karl, unless you, if you wanted to talk about anything in particular, or I can transition to something else.
No, you should go.
Okay. So number one, I wanted to ask, I wanted to check, did you all talk about Claude yesterday? Opus 4.5?
I wasn't here, sorry.
Brian and I spoke about it at some length.
Okay,
but
cool. I didn't want to just go.
I want to add more because there's more and more information coming out about all of the major models. So if we're going to go to the model wars now, I'm all for it. Go for it.
Okay. Well, since we already covered really Opus 4.5, I'll touch upon what you had mentioned a little earlier about the Genesis mission. So an executive order was signed to create the Genesis mission. It's a decade-scale federal push to use AI on massive government science data sets. The White House said that the program will build an integrated AI platform that links national laboratory supercomputers, experimental facilities, and decades of federal research data. The Department of Energy will lead the effort, coordinating 17 national labs and thousands of scientists to train scientific foundational models and AI agents that can propose experiments, steer instruments, and help design new materials and energy systems. Officials are casting the initiative as the most ambitious U.S. science mobilization since the Manhattan Project and the Apollo era, with goals that include modernizing the electric grid, advancing nuclear and fusion research, and strengthening national security. Supporters argue that turning fragmented data into a unified AI-ready resource could double research productivity and help the US keep pace with global AI investments. Critics are already raising questions about long-term funding, security controls, and how much of the resulting capability will be shared with universities and private companies. So why does this matter? If this works, it changes how quickly new batteries, drugs, and clean energy tech reach the market. Because AI can squeeze more insight out of data we are already paid to collect. So, a big initiative. This is, every year there seems to be one big initiative. I think last year was the whole Stargate project. 500 billion planned and spent on that and whatnot. I think it's interesting that this scientific data hasn't already been shared amongst the different laboratories. And so now they've created a system or to build a system that has this sharing of scientific data. That's the part that kind of threw me for a loop when I heard this news. Like, normally within the academic and the scientific community, there is a process of sharing the information. They go through peer review, they go through all of this. I'm imagining this more has to deal with things that are marked secret or classified or something like that. But I would imagine that kind of information was already shared. This is probably more like the streamlining effect of having a collected database, or at least that's what it's hoped for. Okay. The other story I have lined up is sort of similar. It's from Amazon. So AWS plans to invest up to $50 billion to expand AI and supercomputing infrastructure dedicated to the US government customers. The company said that the multi-year build-out will add nearly 1.3 gigawatts of high-performance computing capacity, where many processors work together to on one problem across its top secret, and GovCloud regions, using new data centers that house custom AI chips and NVIDIA systems. Federal agencies would gain broader access to services like Amazon Bedrock, SageMaker, and Claude-powered tools to train models, run simulations, and analyze sensitive data sets in classified environments. Amazon frames the move as a way to speed defense, intelligence, and scientific missions, from threat detection to drug discovery, while keeping data on US soil under strict compliance rules. The announcement follows a series of large cloud and AI contracts with the US government and comes as rivals court similar deals. Supporters highlight potential gains in productivity and national competitiveness, while skeptics point out the energy usage, vendor lock-in, and the growing influence of a few giants over critical public infrastructure and decision making. So to me, it sounds like these two stories are somewhat about their interconnectedness, at least the kind of data and infrastructure questions there. Okay, well, I could keep on going unless someone else has another story they want to talk about.
So I put this in chat. Did I miss the Claude conversation? Because I thought we were excited to go into it.
Phil talked about Claude yesterday, so I didn't want to rehash the same thing. But if you guys want to keep on going to Claude, let's do it.
There's more to say.
There's more to say about Claude and about Gemini 3 and about OpenAI 5.1. So I want to lay this out a little bit, and I have a chart that I want to share, because here's what's really happened here is that within a period of 8 days, 3 killer frontier models all released, one after the other, and each time the next one was released, it was beating the others. But so now it's time for us to see, after the dust has cleared, where they all lay out. Like, these are the 3 main players here. And I saw in some thread somewhere, like, what everybody's talking about this. Why don't they ever mention Grok in this thing? Because I guess Grok 4.1 is also a very competent model, and it has some peculiar advantages as well, I'm sure. But we're going to talk about the big three here.
It's because it came out like during the 30 seconds between GPT-3 Pro and 5.1 or maybe it wasn't 5.1, maybe it was
5.1
Codex
Pro Codex
Max Codex 729. Yes.
Right. Okay. So when Gemini 3 came out and then the Gemini 3 Pro model was released, those new models crushed the competition, and including in the Math Arena Apex mathematics test, Gemini 3 Pro scored 23.4%, which was compared to GPT 5.1's 1%. Okay, that's how big an advantage Google Gemini 3 Pro set that way. Okay, and then in addition to that, Gemini 3 Pro, again, a slightly larger model than just the standard Gemini 3 that comes out. Gemini 3 Pro, and I'm not sure how to parse those because there's also Gemini 3 Deep Think, which is the winner in the ARC AGI 2 thing. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But Gemini 3 Pro set a new high score for AI models in the Tracking AI's offline IQ test, meaning it cannot use search or anything else. It has to use its internal reasoning capabilities. It's offline. And it surpassed Grok 4 Expert Mode's 126, achieving 130 point IQ on a reasoning test, basically. So that's Google Gemini 3. So then Anthropic's coming back strong with Claude Opus 4.5. It reclaimed the top spot on key coding benchmarks like SWE-Bench Verified, software engineering, 81%, edging out Gemini 3 Pro's 76%. So significantly better than Gemini 3 Pro. And at the same time, the important takeaway for Claude Opus 4.5 is they cut their prices. Opus was their top model before, and it was expensive in the 4.1. The new Opus 4.5 is a third the cost of what 4.1 Opus 4.1 was before. So they're making it affordable, and it is the top state-of-the-art model when it comes to coding benchmarks. Okay, but then OpenAI came out with Codex Max using 5.1. And that one introduced this context compaction technology that allows for breakthroughs in the context continuity of agentic work using this. So basically, there's no end to how long this thing can go on reasoning without losing its track of what it's doing. And that because of this compaction technology that OpenAI introduced. And then yesterday we mentioned that another new model, I can't keep them straight in my head, also used, or Gemini actually demonstrated as part of their new technology. They have a context condensation, or they use some other term that is about context summarization and passage to the next player. So let me share this chart here. And I want to just show some things that kind of make sense of all of that a little bit more than all the possible interpretations and comparisons that we can make here. So I think someone else has to put that up on the screen for us. So here we have the AI model performance benchmark comparison across various metrics. And you see Gemini 3 in deep think mode is here at the top left with this batch of winning scores, largely in the area of intelligence and reasoning. Humanities Last Exam, significantly above Gemini 3 Pro in the deep think mode. And the next player is way down here at 30.7%, which was GPT-5 Pro. Look at ARC AGI 2, which is a pure kind of reasoning test for intelligence. It's as recently as just a few months ago, all of the models struggled to get 3% on ARC AGI 2. And now Gemini 3 DeepThink does 45%, Opus 4.5 at 37.6, and the other players, including GPT, way down in the teens. So Gemini, I think the takeaway here is that Gemini is the smartest model. Now look at Opus 4.5. Pretty darn smart still, pushing the number close up to the numbers on these top reasoning tests. But in terms of coding, this is where it shines. So Opus 4.5, we were all excited about Sonnet 4.5. Well, Opus 4.5 is really the new, top of the charts offering from Anthropic, and it's focused on coding to a large degree. And then for multimodal work, it's not necessary to apply Gemini 3's deep thinking, but you can see that the top scores are achieved for all of these multimodal tests by Gemini 3 Pro. And that kind of breaks down the players here. And frankly, it tells me that OpenAI really isn't in the running so much anymore, as are Gemini and Claude. So that's my takeaway on that. Discuss.
One thing that I want to, well, I guess just reminds me of, I think back in the 2012s, I think when the iPhone 4, 5, 6 in that area came out, I remember Google, their phones were significantly superior. And you ask any Android person, they'll list my specs. They'll list the specs to the degree, but it didn't matter. It literally didn't matter. You could have the most advanced phone in your hand. And I think that's kind of sometimes when I see it's like a lot of the models lead with the evals, but I was like, for the person outside the bubble, it makes no difference. The people can't even understand what an MMMU is or ArcAGI when you're like, what the hell is that? And it's sort of like, there's a post by I forgot, Giacomo. He's from Harvard. He was an AI researcher, and he's like, the evals are fine, but based on actual use of people use, what will they actually gravitate to? And I kind of discount the people on X because it's that's right. A very, very unique kind of group. It's just I'm thinking though, what when people or the comments are, oh, OpenAI is falling behind or Gemini fell behind or whatever it was, I was like, yeah, that's not what I hear on the ground though. I don't know what can push through a massive adoption of Gemini, which I think from a multimodal perspective is fantastic. There's a lot of new use cases, but how do you put that narrative in front of all the people at work that are like, yeah, that's great, but I'm going to still use my ChatGPT? Because I remember the same thing. The Android, oh, that's great, but I'm still going to use my iPhone. I don't care what you say. It's kind of like that.
I think Google Workspace is the thing that's going to make that shift a little bit. But I think it may very well be like we saw with people with Siri, right? I don't use AI, I use Siri, right? You use AI if you're using Siri. You're using bad AI, it will get better. But I think that's likely what we're likely to see for Gemini coming in and being able to do stuff. You just click that diamond and you ask a question and it tells you where the thing is. Sometimes it finds it in your Gmail. But I also think you're right in terms of the benchmarks not mattering very much, because I switched to iPhone after one too many times of handing my Android phone to somebody and saying, hey, would you take a picture? And them saying, oh, I don't know how to use this.
I don't know how to do
it was like, or can you help me with the Android phone? The answer was no. If you had an iPhone, I'd know exactly how to tell you how to do it.
I remember the comments were like, people are stupid. Why do you it's just this. I'm like, whoa. Most people don't care about all the the thing. Like most people don't know how you'll have to guide them through what you think is easy. Taking a picture is like actually at that time was like a little bit foreign concept to a lot of people. So it's like, and that's where I'm kind of seeing it's like, oh, you should just do. I was like, do you know, like if you actually look at these models, like the drop downs are ridiculous, and you're like, I don't even know what that means. If you're not in the space, you're like, I have no clue what guided learning is. The hell's that? Nor do I care because I'm just gonna do my thing and away I go. So it's something else to me has to. I don't know what it is, but it's sort of like, have we gone to the space where like ChatGPT is synonymous with AI, and that's kind of like, and Gemini is just kind of essentially a product. It's like, oh, that's great. I use ChatGPT, but in the mind space, and that's kind of
well. I think right now ChatGPT is equivalent of Kleenex.
Yes.
You know,
yes, literally Kleenex,
not a
right?
facial tissue. It's not AI. It's ChatGPT.
It's ChatGPT.
But what we're seeing, I just wanted to point out, and you know, I'm in total alignment with you, Karl. The thing with the benchmarks is, this is how tech does its assessments or tries to push itself initially. Does anybody remember the CPU megahertz gigahertz wars, right? Cycles.
Yep.
It's like, oh, well, this Pentium came out with
Yeah.
1,000 megahertz. Well, this came out with 1.4 gigahertz, right? But
Yeah.
that didn't say anything about what the actual result was. And so I think a lot of people are getting to the point, or at least within our larger bubble here, is it comes down to the use cases and what's the actual output.
Yeah.
Like, for example, right now, all the models are different enough in what they're the best at to where you kind of want to use them all in the right use case, or at least use them in conjunction with with each other. Like I just saw about an open source project that was tied them all up into sort of like a council of experts kind of situation where you could you'd have your orchestration, you would send it off to your query would be then determined which model would this best fit for. Everyone would answer, and then they would deliberate on what the answer was and seek alignment through that process, right? So sort of the mechanisms that's already happening within each model, but now amongst all of these separate models. But that kind of goes back to what I was talking about in terms of it really is what kind of use case am I going to go for? If Gemini is better at assimilating dozens of documents and huge amount of context, and then being able to distill that into a more compact form, and then I need to turn that into a coding project and putting that into Claude for coding, and if that coding then needs another model to generate a creative thing, then I'm going to use that, you know. And so I think we're still at the point where there isn't okay, I'm going to be in the Claude camp, or I'm going to be in the Gemini camp, or OpenAI camp, and that's all I'm going to use. Because even if we were using the benchmarks, that what Andy showed clear different sections of what is being tested: reasoning versus agentic coding versus creativity or whatnot, and each model or each grouping of models seem to be better at one section or another. So yeah, I'm with you, Karl. I don't think I don't think the benchmarks are terribly useful for people who just want to see what they can do with it. I think as long as it's going up and to the right on a chart, that's what we want to see. The closer the percentages get to 100 is kind of the direction we want to go in. And knowing enough about what models are really good at any particular feature or subset and weaving those together might be the end result. I mean, all until we can run our own version on our own hardware for our own purposes, and then just send out queries whenever we absolutely need to. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Is there anything else that we want to cover specifically about Claude? Or do you have anything more I should ask Andy?
No, so one thing I want to do before I head off is I think Claude itself from a it's an interesting point because when you mention all three models, it's unfortunate that I don't see as many people do this, and people here do, right? But if you mix models and you go from one to another, either you combo them or you know specifically which task you're doing and which model performs the best at, that in itself is a superpower for a lot of people. But because the focus is on this, whatever it is, I think it's like there has to be more content or discussions around, if you combo these things together, what can you actually do? Because they have so many good strengths that if you actually know how to play off them, it just works out, right? Because like you could plan something, create something. I think again, Nate Jones had a great point of like, if you create in if you start with Gemini as a strategic partner, and if you have something clean, then you go into ChatGPT and lay out a good structure, and then take it to Claude and code that structure 1, 2, 3. It actually works way better than just one of them. But obviously, you kind of have a little bit more advanced knowledge on why you would use one over the other, or in succession, which is interesting.
Well, and also a use case that warrants that level of pre-work and cognitive load that it takes to remember which feature, which use case, which model, which moment, and really truly optimize it without just like thinking maybe you're optimizing it. I mean, we're talking about a level of intricacy that I would say is like for extreme experts. And I love it. And I try to do it. And typically at the end, I'm like, you feel cool, Anne, but you probably didn't get it. You probably didn't make it that much better.
See, and this, we were having a conversation in the chat about the voice agents, about Alexa and Siri and those kinds of things. This would be a perfect use for that. So I say,
yes.
Hey, Siri, I want to talk out a product idea that I have. And Siri says, excellent. So you're at the ChatGPT stage. Go ahead. We'll launch the interview for that. And then like, oh, excellent. Let's go and build a prototype. Then like you would have like, it would be helpful if I didn't have to keep those details in my brain, but on the day that I knew all of it, I programmed it into the voice agents and it would do that. And I probably could just like, it could say, yes, Beth, now is the time to switch to Claude. Or now is the time to switch to Gemini.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So
let me just say one thing about Claude, which is unlike Gemini, it isn't particularly multimodal. And so if you're doing stuff with text, it's good. It's probably the best. If you're coding, it's clearly the best option in my view. But
only if you use
the generalist use of an AI system, Gemini, with the ability to do things like generate a slide deck and or simultaneously do infographics that are complex around the text that you're working with, that I think makes it advantageous to work in the Gemini ecosystem, not to mention all of the connectors and integrations that exist and will exist with Google going forward.
Okay. But we also said that something being best at one thing, right? Like Claude is best at coding right now. But it's better at coding if you take a break periodically, have Gemini review it, and then bring it back to Claude, right? So like best doesn't mean solo in a way, right?
Mhm.
You
Good
can't
point.
just
Yeah.
And those of you who remember back to the days gone by when I was working on the Sensei project, I was using Gemini 2.5 Pro as a coding supervisor on top of Claude within Lovable. So Claude was the Claude Sonnet 3.5, and then Claude Sonnet 4.5 now is the coding agent inside Lovable. But I found that Gemini 2.5 Pro had a more expansive, more comprehensive, I should say, understanding of the coding work that we were doing together. And the lovable, the lovable agent inside there lost track and went willy-nilly quite often. And I used Gemini to bring it back in line.
Mm-hmm. I do have one anecdotal thing about Gemini 3, which has been personally the most impressive, is the token count has decreased by over 50% for one of our episodes for analysis. So we would hit the over 1 million token mark consistently with each one of our episodes. But now we're hitting about 450 to 500,000 tokens, which is fantastic when you need to analyze the entire episode, build out a transcript, all of that fun stuff. So that's just as anecdotal evidence of how good Gemini 3 can be for our own personal use cases. Okay, so before we move on to our next segment, if you want these stories in your feed more often, tap follow and subscribe so you do not have to chase the algorithm. Okay, AI and science is up next. All right. So most of us never think about magnets. They are hidden inside our phones, laptops, speakers, cars, and wind turbines. They just quietly do their job, but those strong magnets often depend on rare earth elements, names like neodymium and dysprosium. They're not magic, but they are hard to mine, messy for the environment, and heavily concentrated in just a few countries. When that supply shakes, prices and projects can shake too. A team at the University of New Hampshire decided to attack this problem in a different way. Instead of running only new experiments, they asked, what happens if we let AI read everything we have already done? They focused on magnetic materials, decades of research, and thousands of papers and data tables, old results buried in PDFs, appendices, and scan charts. They built an AI system that acts like a tireless reader. For each paper, it tries to pull out the important details. What elements are in the sample, how the material was made, how strong the magnet is, and at what temperature it loses its magnetism. All of those details get turned into structured data, not just text, but a big table that the computer can search and analyze. From this, the team built the Northeast Materials Database, roughly 67,000 magnetic materials in one place. From that huge list, the AI helped highlight 25 new compounds that look like strong candidates for high Curie temperature magnets. Curie temperature is just the point in which a magnet stops being magnetic as it gets hot. For motors and generators, higher is better. Now, this work was published in the Journal of Nature Communications, so it's published and gone through the peer review system. The database is public, so other labs and companies can explore it instead of repeating the same trials by hand. Even if a few of those 25 candidates turn into real products, the effects are concrete. Motor makers might be able to use less neodymium. EV makers could see more stable pricings for key parts. Wind turbine builders might get magnets that can handle more heat with fewer failures. For everyday people, you'll never see the material name on the box, but you'll feel it as whether an electric car is affordable, whether appliances are less likely to spike in price, and whether clean energy products can be planned out without constant supply chain drama. But there is a deeper idea here. This is AI and science. not AI in chat apps. This is not AI just answering trivia. It's changing what scientists look at next. When you let AI read tens of thousands of paper, it can spot patterns humans might miss. It might notice that certain combination of elements tend to make strong magnets at higher temperatures. It might suggest recipes that no single lab would have guessed on its own. It can also show you where there are big gaps, areas nobody has explored much, or old results that deserve a second look. That is powerful. It can save time and money. It can reduce waste from dead-end experiments, and it can point science towards problems that matter, like getting away from fragile rare earth supply chains. It also raises critical questions. Who decides which questions we point these AI systems at? Who owns the models and the data they're trained on? If a big company pays for the compute and the software, do they own the discoveries? What about the scientists who wrote the original papers or the taxpayers who funded the work? There is a fairness question too. Right now, this kind of AI often lives in big tech companies, national labs, and a few well-funded universities. Smaller labs and researchers in less wealthy countries may not gain same access. If AI for science becomes the main way to discover new materials, that gap could turn into a real power imbalance. So this one project on magnets stands in for a bigger shift. AI that reads our past science and suggests our future science. AI that quietly influences which materials we build into our cars, our grid, and our devices. And that's why this matters, not just for magnets, but for the way we do discovery. So here is the closing question for the table and for everyone listening. Think about that one everyday thing you own or your favorite thing that uses a motor, a speaker, or anything that uses magnets. If AI discovered materials could make that one thing either cheaper, more durable, or more environmental friendly, which one of those three would you choose and why?
Interesting. And is environmental friendliness part of extraction, or like what happens when you discard it?
Oh yeah, part of that entire cycle, right? Because
Right.
it's not just acquiring the material, then it becomes the manufacture of the product, and then becomes the maintenance of the product, and final the disposal of the product.
Yeah.
So any part of those kinds of things.
Yeah, fascinating. I think like it makes me go back to Nikola Tesla, right?
Mhm.
And the kinds of things which I realize now doesn't, like, Nikola existed before the car and Elon, right? Like we should give his name back to him as like when we say it. But yeah.
So Honey Curls from chat.
That is
you-
Gwyn.
That's
That is
Gwyn?
Gwyn, everybody.
Oh, hey Gwyn. So you're saying
Yes.
reliable. What's the product or the item or the technology or whatever it is? What is the thing that you want that's more reliable? I guess that's the question. And why is reliability to that thing more important to you? Does anybody else have a thing that comes to mind? What in your everyday life that you use? I mean, cars are an obvious one. Like the new development in battery science has been really jumping off in the last couple of years. There's a big push into sodium batteries, which use far less rare earth materials,
Right.
or if any, in their process. They're a little bigger, but and they don't produce quite as much at this point. But the technology can be developed to where they could replace lithium ion batteries. And if you don't need lithium batteries anymore, that's a huge drop in lithium supply issues and questions about that.
So would go and because you're
Okay, I was going to say, for me, I I'm not well practiced at evaluating these trade-offs because I'm Gen X and grew up without recycling and everything was just consumption. But I do have 2 college-age kids who are Gen Z and environmentalists and sustainability and political, like we don't get to do anything fun anymore, is what I'm trying to say. We
Next week, we hear from Anne's children for a rebuttal.
I mean, they're and by the way, I am with them, and I understand that, like, the things that we do, that we have rationalized, like single serving cups and whatnot. But what I appreciate about this conversation, Jyunmi, is that you're helping us. This is a meta answer and a non-answer, but you're helping us train our brains around a topic that many of us have waited far too, I'm speaking on behalf of the entire generation, have waited far too long to start thinking about and to consider that a reduction in our own comfort would be fine because we already have all the things, and that if there's a longer term, impact that we can include in our calculation, that's not a bad thing. And as we think about how we influence how AI is deployed, I think this is an incredibly important conversation. And I noticed how I used to think about, a concrete example is, I used to think about how many images I was making in a day because of the kids, had equated one Midjourney image with 1 bottle of water, right? So it was very clear. I don't think it was true exactly. It's not an exact science. It's a perfect way to make us stop and think. But I haven't thought about that in a long time. I just hit regenerate and rerun and upscale, and it generate 1,000 images to get one good one. So,
Well, it also brings into context like when you have those kind of breakthrough moments where you're like, okay, this equals this, that story lasts much longer than that equivalent, right? The energy it takes, the water it takes, all of those have gotten more efficient. And we come back to Javon's paradox. I really need to look that up so I know what I'm saying correctly. But more people are using it, so even though you've gotten more efficient, you may still have similar problems to a fewer number of people using it at a less efficient rate. But I do think that those breakthrough moments are like zeitgeist. Now we can kind of have the conversation, but then we need to say, and it's nuanced. So let's update our models here, our brain models.
Brain models.
Because apparently I am actually a robot.
Bye, everybody. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Yeah.
All righty.
Thanks, Ann.
Bye.
So I think this is probably a really good place to wrap. So that's all for today's episode of the Daily AI Show. I want to thank everyone who was hanging out in the live today and everyone who catches the VOD later. If you want to keep talking about AI in your life, you can join our community at thedailyaishowcommunity.com. So bring your questions, your experiments, and your hot takes. If you enjoyed today's conversation, hit the things that make the ding so you don't miss the next one. We'll be back with more headlines, deep dives, and practical tools. Until then, keep your minds and your hearts open. Aloha.
Woot. And we will be back tomorrow and Friday. I will be in the seat and we'll see who joins me. Andy, I don't know if you're here. Brian, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Woohoo! We're going to have a great conversation. Thanks. Happy holidays to those who are celebrating, and to everyone around the world. Happy Wednesday. We'll see you Thursday. Okay. There is no end stream, so I'm going to close the tab. If you are watching, you'll see me in a couple minutes, maybe. All right. When I come back in to try to close. See you, everybody.
This is the pregnant pause after show.
I think we all have to leave.
We have to wait here until Beth comes back.
Let me find.
Hi, Beth. Are you going
Hey.
to shut us down now? Good.
Oh, I do. I have end stream. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
And thank you, Streamlabs, for giving us the ability to end our lives. Thanks, Andy.